So I'm going to talk to you about the business of platforms, or more specifically, the platform business model. And I've done this because I've been lucky enough to see the great presentations from Laura and Andy that are following me. They're going to be talking to you about exactly what MaaS looks like to you and me as travelers, and some of the technology that is supporting MaaS. So I want to go and focus back on the fundamentals, on the economics, on the business model, and to look at really what the chances are of us moving towards this future of mobility as a service in the UK. Just before we get into the nuts and bolts of business models, of platforms, and of mobility as a service, I think it's useful to think about what's in intelligent mobility, what's particularly special about intelligent mobility. And yesterday we heard lots about data and technology. And if we were here as an innovation agency 25, 30 years ago, we would have just heard Margaret Thatcher talking about her Rose to Prosperity programme. We would have heard her talking about spending hundreds of millions of pounds on building hundreds and thousands of miles of new trunk roads and motorways. And back then, the innovation was about cost saving, civil engineering, and really it was the public sector's responsibility to pump our taxpayers' money into the market for economic growth. And zooming forwards to today with the election, we still have economic growth at the core of our policy objectives, but we're a lot smarter about this now, and we're looking to attract and suck in the private sector investment to help bring some of this intelligent mobility to us and make it a reality. And I think mobility as a service, as a business model, is a fantastic example of how we can use private sector money to solve some of our social and transport challenges. So the platform business model, you can see that I don't like words on my slides, I like images. And when I put platform business model into our image library search engine, this was all I got back. And yes, this guy is talking from a platform, and I nearly didn't use it, but then it actually reminded me of some of these images we see in the media, in the papers, of the founders of platform business models. This could be Mark Zuckerberg, it could be Steve Jobs, standing up here like I am today in front of hundreds of adorning investors wanting to spend hundreds of billions of pounds. And that's the sort of investment that we've seen in these companies over the last decade. A couple of years ago, 6 of the biggest companies in the US were platform business models. So it's really important that we understand in the UK how this business model can help mobility as a service become a reality. Uber, of course, just to sort of bring this back home, is an example of a platform business model, but Uber is just the beginning, we hope. So looking now at the platform business model working in mobility, working in the transport space. This is an extract from our Exploring MaaS in the UK report, and it shows transport operators, the producers, the people that offer us seats to move on at the bottom of the ecosystem, and us as travellers or customers or consumers at the top. So if you think about consumers and producers, it's this middle layer, this platform business model that sits in between. If you want to take a step out of transport and go back into retail, you'll all be familiar that Amazon fulfills this role. Started with books and now sells everything. Again, we could see Uber in the middle, starting with taxis and potentially offering us a lot more. So how do platform business models work? How do they become more competitive than the current way of doing business? Currently, us as consumers transact directly with the transport operators. Why do we want to go through a platform model? Well, I think this can be summed up with a little story from chapter 1, verse 1 of the Technology Bible, something that appeared in my head last night. I don't expect you to have read it. But in the beginning, there was a driver called Adam, and there was a founder. And that founder put his server in the cloud, and he gave the location of Adam to the server. And then he found a passenger called Eve. And he connected Eve with Adam via digital, via the server. And Eve enjoyed riding with Adam. And of course, you could say the rest is history, and we have Uber cracked. Uber and any other platform business model at the beginning has this chicken and egg problem. How can I attract consumers and demand into my platform when I have nothing to supply? And how can I attract suppliers when I have no consumer demand? But once that chicken and egg problem's solved, you move to a position of winner takes all very quickly. And we all know how quickly these platform business models grow. And this is why they attract investment. Every one of you in here will today, or at least this week, spend some of your hard-earned cash through a platform business model. So the network effect, you can see, is the fundamental reason really why we could start breaking our silos up and starting to provide a system, a multimodal, full choice, full range of mobility services system to consumers. It's the want of that platform in the middle to aggregate as much as it can so that it then can offer more to more and more consumers, and you get that network effect happening. So from silos to a system. The second attribute of platform business models is really important too, and that's the feedback loop. The feedback loop is really what the platform does to stay competitive, to stop being disintermediated, to manage to keep the suppliers engaged, to keep the consumers engaged, to keep the transactions of value coming through their business. And to do that, they primarily use one thing, and that's feedback, that's sharing of data. And you'll be familiar, if any of you use TripAdvisor or practically anything you do online, normally asks you to rank a set of stars at the end, 0 to 5 stars. And of course, this is the way that the platform knows that you as a consumer is getting a good service. Conversely, from the producers are only in this platform because they want to be, and they want to know which of you as customers is most valuable. They want to glean data from the intermediary to understand if I invest, if I innovate, if I've got a new idea to help me compete on the platform, will this work? And the platform itself can really help the transport operators start to innovate. Of course, the feedback loop is really what we're talking about when we're talking about disruptive business models. It's the feedback loop that shakes up the market, that really makes sure that as a transport operator, you have to be competitive. Just some examples. Some of you may have been waiting for a taxi on a ride-hailing app, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and they keep popping up and they keep disappearing, and you're wondering why. And that could be because the journey you're asking for is a short journey, and the other drivers, the other suppliers, are waiting for you to pop out of the digital queue so they can pick up that longer journey and make more profit. So that's an example of sort of a negative externality around feedback. And so it's this disruptive nature that's a bit of a threat in the platform business model space. So I think that really leads us on to why do we think the platform business model in the UK is frozen? What is the blocker? Why aren't we seeing not just Uber, but lots of platform business models offering lots of choice and more multimodal mass transport, almost the vision that we talk about in the report? Well, I think the quote is here from a fictitious transport operator. I think it says it all. We're damned if we do integrate, and we're damned if we don't. We're frozen. We're not sure what to do. This is a big disruption to our business model. We're damned if we do integrate because we're there almost competing with everyone else digitally on the platform. Think of it as the Go Compare or the Money Supermarket challenge. If you're not on the top 5, or at least the first page of that as an insurer, you probably never get looked at when the car insurance renewal customer comes up. And of course, they're damned if we don't, because when the winner-takes-all platform does grow, if they're not in there, consumers will never recognize and will never understand they're there. So this is the kind of quandary that transport operators could be in. And what's the solution? Well, we know about Brexit, and then journalists invented hard Brexit and soft Brexit. And I was thinking, what could we use to try and get something to stick? So I've come up with delicate disruption. Not hard or soft, delicate. And if anyone can think of a better word, please let me know. So delicate disruption is something that really the Catapult is really keen on. It's something we're really focused on. And it's about helping to de-risk this disruption that has to happen for MaaS to become a reality. And some of the tactics we can use is to start developing and sharing insight on what model contracts could look like. What are the data sharing arrangements that need to be done? How are transactions and values going to be kept in or outside of the platform? Of course, pilots and demonstrators, which you'll hear about in the next presentation, are really important as well to show the use cases that can demonstrate win-wins for everyone in the ecosystem. And we need to share the success and also stop mistakes being repeated when we do these pilots and demonstrators. We may need to invest some some of our hard-earned cash in the ecosystem, whether it's software or digitizing or sensors, to make sure that the ecosystem is as digital as possible. And of course, we need to continually evaluate how we're doing, and if we are not only causing economic growth, but also having triple bottom line benefits, social and environmental policy objectives too. And in terms of policy, it's really important again, and we're very well placed at the Catapult between industry and government to help government really shape the policy so that it moves with the business model disruption. And we know many cases of new platform business models really pushing at the boundaries of what exactly are they defined as, even if it's Uber in terms of are they an employer or some type of agency, or if it's a new pop-up rural bus transport service, can it actually create new routes on a whim, on demand, or is there competition law that prevents that? So changing policy is a really important enabler. So after all of this, you're probably asking yourselves, okay, fine, but why would I spend my money traveling using mobility as a service instead of just jumping into my own car? The fundamentals don't change. We're still stuck with the open access problem. You economists out there understand that if you have open access for a service, you can't optimize it. You need to ration it. And at the moment, whether you're using MaaS to drive or get the bus or your own car, you're still stuck in traffic. And I think it's the platform business model that offers a really great opportunity here because it depoliticizes road charging. We can get to the case potentially in the future where if we have an Amazon of mobility, and that has hundreds of thousands of us wanting to pay for our travel through it, and it asks us if we'd like to get into the city centre a little bit quicker, and some of us as segmented markets will say yes. That intermediary, that MaaS provider will go and speak to the highway authority, and it would say, could I buy access to your bus lane? Could your bus lane become a MaaS lane? And this is a great example of the private sector investment coming through the ecosystem back into the public sector as a new revenue model for councils. And B, it's actually a way of councils getting what they want from their infrastructure. If the deal was that Amazon could use the bus lane, if it used electric buses, they're all full, the models show that they move more people per hour than the status quo. And of course, social inclusion objectives were accounted for, and there was a quota in the bus for people that, for example, couldn't afford to pay for travel. I can't see that being a particularly negative way of using our public infrastructure. So the platform business model can take the sting out, really, of the political hot potato of road pricing, potentially in the future. So just to summarize then, platform business models are a great way of enticing and attracting private sector money into this huge mobility as a service market. Some of the estimates are there's going to be $1.3 trillion of our mobility revenues flowing through platform business models by 2030. So it attracts private sector investment. The network effect and the digitization of the ecosystem can help us break our transport silos down and start creating systems, the vision we're all looking for. It's not going to happen easily, and at the moment the marketplace in many respects is frozen, so we need to start to hold people's hands and start to facilitate delicate disruption to shape MaaS growth in the UK. And then I think the platform is a fundamental part of the solution in terms of optimizing our road space and rationing it in a political, acceptably political way. Thank you very much.